This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 244th session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Karen Stanley from Sussex, England. Karen is the founder of Stanley Strategic Consultancy LLP and a member of the Propertymark Qualifications Team. With over 20 years of experience in the UK housing industry, she has worked as a solicitor, agency partner and compliance consultant, helping letting agents take control of their compliance, reduce risk and protect the value of their businesses in the UK. Karen, thank you so much for your time today. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Michael. It's really lovely to be here today and I'm very honoured to be able to speak with you. So, as you say, I'm Karen Stanley. I've been a business owner for 26 years, running an independent letting agency. My journey into property started with my husband. He grew up working in his family's property agency. We met at university, both studied law, and we bought his parents' business so that they could retire, and we transformed it into a specialist independent letting agency. Now, this was back in the 1990s. The rental market was a very different world. There were fewer regulations and simpler processes, and the Housing Act 1988 paved the way for the explosion of buy-to-let mortgages. But over the years, the landscape has changed dramatically. In the last 28 years, we've seen 19 legislative changes, 9 of those in the last decade. Now, each one of them has brought massive shifts to how we've operated the business, from rewriting processes, training staff, and ensuring compliance at every level. With my background as a solicitor, compliance became the cornerstone of our business, and I reviewed the laws, created legal documents, and built systems that not only protected our agency, but helped it thrive. So after 26 years of running our agency, we reached a crossroads, whether we should expand with acquisitions or sell and take on new challenges, and we chose the latter. Selling our business to a large corporate agency who's known for its exacting compliance standards. And now we run compliance consultancy, Stanley Strategic Consultants, and I work with estate and letting agent clients, both buyers and sellers, to navigate the complexities of that compliance and due diligence. Unfortunately, it absolutely breaks my heart to see owners of businesses who've built their business up from scratch. It's their absolute baby for 20, 30 years, to get to the point where their head is really into the sale and find that they've got major compliance issues to the point that they have to sell at loss or can't sell at all. So that's where I come in, trying to get to them before they've got that mindset of selling, and helping the agency prepare their business for growth. And also getting into touch with buyers too, in terms of the acquisition or current agents who want to grow and develop their business, because compliance is the foundation of everything. As you've already said, I also work with Propertymark, who's a voluntary professional body for the industry. I work on their highest level of exam, level 4 in property, professional property management, and I help improve the agency standards across the sector. The compliance landscape is a lifeline for the UK rental market. Firms currently are facing fines of £5,000 to £30,000 per error, or even £17 million for breaches for security. And with 170 laws and 400 regulations and more on the way, the stakes have never been higher. The Housing Act reformed renting in the UK, replacing rent-controlled lifetime tenancies with strict grounds for repossession, which are the short-hold tenancies. And the explosion of buy-to-let mortgages became available, which meant more properties were available for tenants to rent. That new act at the time allowed landlords to offer fixed-term agreements and regain possession with a Section 21 notice, commonly known as the no-fault eviction notice, which didn't require a reason. So it was much easier for landlords to get their property back. Whilst the system worked for decades, the rental market has faced growing challenges. There's 1.33 million people currently on a waiting list for social housing. 1 in 21 children in London are legally homeless in temporary accommodation. Rents have continued to rise by 6.1% annually, outpacing inflation and wages. The local housing allowance rates have been frozen, pushing more tenants into arrears. And the poor old NHS have been spending an estimated £340 million annually on health issues linked to substandard housing, unfortunately with the majority of those problems being seen in the social housing sector. And of course, we've got the growing population, which brings our UK rental market at a crossroads. On the one hand, we have rising tenant demand and on the other, a shrinking pool of rental properties, down 20% since 2020. These challenges are compounded by fiscal policies like Section 24 against landlords from deducting mortgage interest as a business cost, which is forcing many landlords to pay tax on paper profits, forcing smaller landlords to exit the market. The result, of course, is an ever-shrinking rental market, with rising homelessness and increased pressure on letting agents to navigate the complex landscape. We've now got more changes afoot. The Renters' Rights Act, which is set to take effect approximately April 26. We haven't got a date for its implementation yet, but it is due to come shortly. It's actually due to gain its royal assent today. So we're waiting on the news as we speak. And that represents the most significant overhaul of rental laws in 40 years in the UK. So this brings us to the biggest overhaul in 40 years. We've got the Renters' Rights Act, which is set to take effect in approximately April 2026. We haven't really got an implementation date yet. In fact, we're due to receive information today that the Act is gaining royal assent today. So it's all very exciting. This represents a major significant overhaul of rental laws. And here's what's changing. So no fixed term tenancies, the abolishment of Section 21 no-fault evictions. There's going to be restrictions on rental bidding and advance payments, prohibition of discrimination against tenants on benefits with or with children. Landlords must belong to an independent redress scheme and register properties on a central database. And the civil penalties for breaches starting at £7,000 per offence, rising to £40,000 for repeat offences. Now, these changes aim to protect tenants, but they also bring new challenges for landlords and agents. For example, landlords will need to prove grounds for possession in court, which could lead to further delays and increased costs. Renting increases can also be challenged, and with the time delays for the hearing, will affect a downward pressure on rent increases. For agents, this means adapting processes, educating landlords, and staying ahead of compliance requirements. It's a big shift, but with the right preparation, it is manageable. So how can letting agents prepare, adapt, and thrive? The majority of landlords in the UK are small scale with 1 to 2 properties, and many are selling up due to rising costs and stricter regulations. Meanwhile, larger institutional investors are consolidating the market, and larger landlords with 5 to 10 properties are coming forward and are still purchasing, which is creating opportunities for independent agents who can adapt and offer personalised services. So letting agents have a unique opportunity to stand out in the evolving market. And these are my 3 strategies for their success. A process review to ensure tenancy agreements and tenant selection and rent arrears procedures so that they're up to date. Education, proactively guide landlords on their obligations to mitigate risks. Most still don't know that this act is coming in, and it's being discussed for the last 3 years. Educate yourself and staff and be the local go-to expert. And in risk management, implement systems to track compliance and prevent penalties. And number 4 is tenant relations, encouraging responsible rent increases and fostering open communication. Additionally, agents can explore new revenue streams, such as offering rent guarantees and professional rent guarantor services and rent review processes. And these not only protect the landlords, but also provide a steady stream of income for agents. But is this good for tenants? It's supposed to be. The Renters' Rights Act aims to protect tenants, but it also brings challenges. Overloaded courts could lead to delays in possession cases. And in some places, it's about 9 months before you receive possession of your property at the moment, leaving tenants in greater rent arrears and hence debt. Tenants who fail to pay rent or damage properties may face long-term consequences, including county court judgments, preventing them from gaining credit or another property to rent in the private rental sector. Local authorities will also see this as making themselves voluntarily homeless, and as such will not have a duty to rehouse them. And mediation. Mediation is going to be increasingly important to resolve disputes efficiently before having to resort going to court. Over the last 28 years, 26 years in business and 2 years since, I've learned some valuable lessons. You've got to be ready for change in this market. You've got to plan for it. In fact, systems are key, but people matter. Regularly review and refine your processes. It's okay setting a process and telling everybody to go and do it in month 1, but by month 6, they probably aren't, or something else has gotten in the way and they've forgotten all about it. You can't do all this alone. You invest in your own learning and seek support from experts so that you can reach your goals faster. And compliance is non-negotiable. It's the foundation of growth and value. the rental market is evolving, but it is here to stay. The rental market is evolving, but it's definitely here to stay. With 4.1 million renters in the UK and growing demand, there's no better time to prepare your business for the future. The key is to embrace the change, stay informed, and take action. The rental market is constantly evolving. With the new Act, it's 171 laws, and there's even more regulations coming out from that over the next few years too. But the changes can be opportunities. Landlords are going to increasingly find this difficult in keeping their processes and systems in check because it's forever changing, but letting agents are in a better position to deal with that. And they can offer more personalised services, educating landlords and building stronger tenant relationships. And for buyers of letting agencies, there's never a better time to invest, especially when you can take a business and adapt it and thrive it into the new landscape. The truth is, letting agents in the UK have been riding the waves of change for the last 40 years, and we'll ride this one too. The key is preparation, education, and a willingness to adapt. With the right strategies, the future of renting isn't just secure, it's full of potential. So if there's any agencies wanting to buy up property portfolios or other agencies out there in the UK, willing to have a chat. We have a renters' rights ready checklist for agencies to review so that they can make sure their processes and procedures are all in readiness for the Act to come into force, as well as I have one-to-one consultations and other procedures in place that can go in and spot check compliance issues ready for any buying process.
Section 21, the no-fault evictions, if I remember that correctly. Can you elaborate on this one a little bit?
So landlords have two ways in which to gain possession of their properties at the moment. By serving a notice of possession to the tenant and then voluntarily leave. The majority, 99% of them in our agency, that's how it worked. We very rarely had to deal with possession claims. The alternative way, and the quickest, the most simplest way, was with a Section 21 notice for possession, which everybody could deem the no-fault notice because you didn't have to provide a reason why you were giving that notice. The majority of the time, there is a reason. Landlords don't get rid of good tenants. You like good tenants who are going to stay in the property for a long period of time paying the rent. So there's generally a reason for them. Usually because the landlord wanted to sell the property. That's most of the reasons why we is issuing that notice. Or the alternative is that it's usually antisocial behaviour. Or, there's problems being caused within that relationship, and it's not happy, it's not healthy. And it's so much easier because it's a fast track procedure through the courts. You didn't have to provide any evidence. It was, it's a done deal. You're going to get possession. The alternative ways is through Section 8 grounds, which is what's coming in which is continued, with the Renters' Rights Act, and which is being beefed up, so to speak. There's more grounds for it, but it forces landlords to go to court if the tenant doesn't give up. And it can get nasty because you have to give a reason. So you're going to have to find, if it's antisocial behaviour, you've got to find all the evidence to be able to do that. And that can be tough. You will have new grounds that the landlord wants to sell the property or wants to move themselves or a family member back into the property. And that's okay. That's new and additional to the Section 8 grounds that we currently have. So landlords are totally protected. It's just going to take longer. And the process and procedures to get there have to be right. You're going to be able to prove that you've done certain things and that you've done all the maintenance and you've looked after the properties and you've looked after the tenants, to be able to deal with any counterclaims that come along. And because it's going to court, it takes a lot longer to go to court. The rent arrears ground is being extended to 2 months. It's 4 months rent arrears. So it's a longer process to be able to get to court in the first place. And once you get there, it's okay. You can get around it by having rent guarantee, legal expenses insurance, which a lot of landlords don't have, even when they live abroad, because they haven't had to deal with these kind of situations before. It's just a different mindset.
Apart from that, what's the legal landscape if I want to increase my rent as a landlord? Because this might be another reason that I say, hey, listen, I know that from different countries, you have a cap on which is normally like based on inflation or any other benchmark. And somehow people would like to renovate the apartment and increase value. And then the tenant is a little bit, I don't know, in the way in order to do that. What's the law there? How can I, as a landlord, increase and bump up my
So in England, so it's different laws for Wales and Scotland, and I don't deal with those, but yeah, there's rent caps in Wales. That's all I can say. And Scotland has been tinkering with it since the pandemic. In England, there are no rent caps, and the government have categorically said that they will not put rent caps on. But there's going to be a rent suppression. So currently, you can increase the rent by voluntary agreement or by Section 13 notice. After the Renters' Rights Act comes in, you can only increase it by once a year by a Section 13 notice, an official notice, 2 months notice instead of one. You can agree an amount with the tenant once that notice is served, but only less than the amount that's actually on the notice. If the tenant doesn't agree, then they can apply to the first tier tribunal for them to decide whether the rent is fair. Now, when they consider it, they have surveyors on their teams. The surveyors will look at the market rent for the banding that property is in, and they will consider also the state and condition of the property. So if the tenant turns around and says, well, the landlord hasn't done anything for the property in the last year, and it's, this bit's falling apart, nothing's being looked after, the maintenance is really poor, or the kitchen's 50 years old, or bathrooms, whatever. It's not as modern as the house down the road, well, I shouldn't be paying that amount of money. They're going to take all that into account. So it's going to be a much greater detail for landlords to be able to make their case for that market rent. It isn't just a case of, well, 2 doors down, they achieved that amount of money last year or a few months ago, then I should be able to get the same. It's going to be a lot more detailed than that.
The way you describe it is a lot of back and forth, and there's no clear structure in it. And this actually comes back to what you mentioned in the beginning. There's so many regulations, and it's a mess. And it's a lot of it implies a lot of bureaucratic work, because for me it's a challenge to get like direct information from you, not because you want to withhold them, but probably that's just a reflection of this very customized landscape of law. Is my feeling correct here?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. It's really tricky. It's really tricky. This is just the new act that we're trying to get to grips with at the moment. You have all the other laws that have come in before that they still apply, and agents have to deal with. And there's more laws and regulations on agents than there are on landlords, for example.
I buy a house, I want to rent it out. Is there a default terms and agreement sheet which I, by law, have to use?
So you will be able to have your own tenancy agreement, but the government are going to be prescribing a written statement that you have to serve on the tenant. We don't know what the terms of that is yet. It could, legally you don't have to have a written tenancy agreement in the UK up until this point, because every rental was assumed to be in a short-term tenancy. So everybody was protected, but going forward, every tenancy is going to be an assured tenancy for 1 month on a rolling basis. So basically, once you put a tenant into the property, they will stay there until a landlord has a justified reason under the Section 8 grounds to evict them. The only term is that it can be a month. That's causing some concern in London, particularly where you've got properties that are furnished, and they're concerned that people will rent for a month because it's cheaper than doing it through Airbnb, for example. So there's that one issue. Rent can only be increased once a year, and only by this official format of serving this paper notice in a set form. And then there's a set form for the tenant to respond to it. If then the party can agree. Most of the time, if you've got a tenant in the property, you wouldn't be charging them full market rent anyway, because you want them to stay. So you always go slightly under the market rent. You make an agreement with the tenant, all happy for another year. If that didn't happen, then the tenant can go to the tribunal. The tribunals I think, are something like 2 to 3 months waiting time list at the moment. We, as an industry, are anticipating a huge application uplift because there's no deterrent for the tenant. There's no application fee. They can just put in that application, and the increase won't go ahead until the first year tribunal made the agreement of what they believe it should be. So it's no deterrent to the tenant.
Now, those elements do have strong implications for landlords, but you also mentioned the strong implications for letting agents. And here, help me out. I would like to understand the services which letting agents offer in the UK, because in other markets, it's just a pure transaction and they're good and they're done. They're out of the entire relationship. But I feel like in the UK, there's more involved, and the relationship is a more sustainable one.
Yeah, there's a range of services actually. So they start off with 3 basic services: let only, which means they're just advertising the property. I mean, there's never just they're responsible for the tenants that they put in their properties. There's a let only service, so they'll be advertising the property, they'll sort out the tenancy agreement and effectively get the tenant into the property, and then the landlord takes over and nothing else happens with the agent after that. Second one is through sort of a rent collection service. So that, again, they find the tenants, they put the tenant in, and then throughout the lifetime the tenant's in there, they collect the rent and organise and discuss with the landlord and the tenant for any rent increases every year. And then the final service is what everybody calls a full management service, but we termed it a tenancy management service. So you manage the tenancy rather than the property. So again, that takes in everything: advertising the property, finding the tenant, doing all the references checks, getting the tenant into the property, collecting the rent and giving that to the landlord every month, and doing the reviews every year, and also maintaining the property whilst the tenant is in that property. So on average, there can be, well, I've seen some different stats recently, between 2.5 years to 4.2 years a tenant remains in a property on average. I think those averages are getting longer because there's less properties to move into and people aren't moving around quite so much. So that's a long time. It's a long relationship that the agents have. Now, I come from a letting agency background particularly, but the majority of letting agents also sell. So a lot of, in the past, estate agents were just pure estate agencies, then you'd have pure letting agencies, and then over the years everything's merged because estate agents realised that lettings was quite good because you've got monthly income coming in, and it's a nice stable income that comes in, as opposed to estate agency, which is very cyclical, and sort of all or nothing, so when you get your commission coming in. So most agents do the full gambit of sales and lettings, and I think that's where some of the problems lie in terms of compliance, because they've taken on lettings as an income generator and haven't fully appreciated the 170 odd laws that we have relating to the work that they're doing, whereas estate agents have got about 3. I jest, but it's very, very minimal in comparison to lettings, and that's where a lot of the time they come unstuck later on.
Thank you so much. And now, follow-up question: what is the compliance situation? Is it on the landlord? Is it on the letting agent? Who is basically compliant when things go wrong before the authorities?
It's both, depending on the terms of the agency terms and conditions with the landlord. I mean, the agent is the landlord's agent, so they work on the landlord's behalf. But if you say you're going to do something in the terms and conditions and you don't do it, then the agent is responsible. There's certain new laws that are coming through within the Renters' Rights Act that will make the agent responsible. For example, if a landlord uses a Section 8 notice to say they're selling the property and then don't go on to sell that property within a year, and they want to re-let that property within a year, and the agent does it, then they're going to be hit with a £7,000 fine, a civil penalty notice. agents have to have more due diligence. They have to be, on the ball doing the checks and balances. It's not just a case of, great, I've got a new landlord coming through the door, let's get the property on the market as quickly as possible. We in the heyday, we would have properties go on in the morning, in the afternoon they're gone. Barely got through to the advertising stage. You'd have people on the books waiting to jump in, and it's a slower process today because agents have to watch what they're doing. But yeah, ultimately the landlord's still liable for certain things.
Can you go a bit more into detail regarding then also here your services? You mentioned that before a little bit. Where do you think are the priorities right now for letting agents to, you mentioned education before, and the services you're offering? Where do you think is the biggest need, and maybe even starting with awareness, I feel, of letting agents, being aware of all the risk they're exposed to suddenly or will be suddenly? What is your approach there? Where do you see right now the situation regarding the letting agents, and where do you tap in? You mentioned then also from there the services you're offering and the need of education. Is it only education? Is it even building awareness? Where do you think right now is the lack of letting agents and the need, and where do you tap in to help them to maybe also mitigate their risks?
This legislation has been in process for 3 years. It was with the previous government and it failed. And now this government has continued and brought it to the end. For legal nerds like myself, we are really excited about that, and we're following it through all its different changes up until this point. But most agents probably haven't. Recent polls have shown that most agents are not prepared for this at all. They've been waiting for it to become an act before they finalise what the problems are and what they need to do with it. We've been told that we will be given enough time to implement it. That could be 4 months, it could be 6 months. We're hoping for 6 months to April, because that's generally the time when the laws are changed. Even 6 months doesn't give you very long to change a lot of processes and procedures within an agency business. So lack of awareness is huge. Landlords don't know about it. And they're going to be hit with these fines without even realising that they've done anything wrong. The government has promised to do mass education, so we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, I know Propertymark, that I do some work with, are pushing agents to promote this as quickly as possible, explaining to landlords what the new changes are, how we're going to mitigate them. And they can be. It's by processes and procedures and making sure that things are really tight. My concern is, and from what I see with agents who are looking at selling and buying, is that they haven't got the groundwork, the framework, the foundation of the compliance laws that they already have under their belt, accurate enough before they add these things on top of it. So I've produced this Renters' Right Build checklist. It's a really, really practical checklist for agents to go through their agency businesses and check and make sure the processes and procedures are in place for this new act. But I also provide compliance or legacy protection review policies and checks where I can do it quite remotely and secretly, so the staff are not made aware that anything is being done. And I can run through checks of their portfolio and business documents to make sure that they're compliant now. That can be 1 or 2 days of checks, depending on the style and type of the business work that they do. I can also run full compliance checks. So you go in and look at a larger percentage of the business to look for recurring errors they're going through, and that helps agents to have a heads up. You can trade out of these problems majority of the time, so you can sort them out. And with a good sales broker as well, even if you have errors in your business and you need to sell, if you go up front to a buyer and say, this is the problem, we know this is a problem, you can get around it and you can sort things out with indemnities and move forward and still be able to sell the business. But it's about, but buyers don't want to find out during due diligence that there's problems. and the realization that you didn't know that there are problems as well, because then they worry that there's other things, and then that's why they kind of bring me in to go in and double check everything. And after months of negotiations, and already thinking that you're booking your holiday when you finally sold the business, to find that you then can't sell it, or it's actually worth an awful lot less than you thought, makes me really want to cry. We know how much love and attention you take in running your own business. You want it to be as valuable as possible.
What for data, and how much of data do you need in order to do the assessment correctly? And also, how long does the process on average take in general?
So I can do a review in 1 to 2 days on a smaller sample of properties, so up to about 25 properties. But if you're doing 50, or plus, depending on what errors are coming up, then you might want to do more properties and more reviews. So I would always get an agent to come and do a 2-day check, which is online. It's just dipping into their CRM systems and their online filing systems. So it's nice and discreet. Nobody knows that you're doing it. Then I can get jump on a call like this, and you go through the issues that you found and what they want to do about it. I'm a solicitor, but I don't give legal advice. I would point them in the right direction of where they need to go to get that advice and make sure they're happy with it going forward.
Do you also consult external stakeholders, such as directly valuers or anyone else?
Absolutely. We also work with transfer brokers, who are like estate agents for estate agents of businesses, and they have a huge wealth of knowledge on what you can and can't do with the business in terms of the sale. And they have huge connections with a lot of the corporate buyers. There's a lot of investment buyers, especially coming into London, the equity firms who are buying up agencies. A lot of the smaller agencies and sort of mid-sized agencies, I say, are being bought up. Ones with quite a few agency offices are being swallowed up into the bigger firms.
Coming to Propertymark and your involvement and affiliation there, you are Propertymark Qualifications Team member, and you are contributing directly to the Propertymark Level 4 Joint Professional Property Agency Management course. For anyone who has no idea what that is, give us an overview there, please.
So the Level 4 course is the highest course that you can do with Propertymark, and they are a recognised qualification provider in the industry. At the moment, it's voluntarily to qualify for that. Propertymark agents are the most qualified in the sector, because we voluntarily sign up to the code of practice and to be qualified on the Level 3 and then ultimately the Level 4 qualification. The government has been talking since 2019 that this is the only industry where you can be doing any other job yesterday and become an estate agent or a letting agent today. So there's no qualifications, no prerequisites. So if there's anybody wanting to rent or buy from agents over here, then I would recommend them to be Propertymark agents. This qualification that I get involved with, I absolutely love it. Obviously, with my background, I love the law, and to be involved with Propertymark's qualifications, just help with the writing of the exam and the marking of the exam. So it's really great to be able to see all these new agents coming through and with this great qualification. It helps to keep the standards high.
In the UK overall, about the general landscape of letting agents, you don't need to be member of Propertymark. You can just start your own letting agency and broker agency, and those people are pretty much exposed to all the risk you just mentioned today, correct? Because they don't go that much into maybe the professionalism and education. Do I get it correctly, or what's the status there?
Yes, that's about right. Yes. Yeah. Anybody can set themselves up overnight.
Do you see any trend from the UK government to improve the importance of becoming a Propertymark affiliated member in order to execute the profession of a real estate letting agent? Or do you think it stays as liberal as it is at the moment?
No, it is changing. There's a new act coming through, the leasehold commonhold reform act. Well, I've got that wrong. It's about leaseholds act is coming through, and within that, agents who manage properties, large properties, blocks of flats, that sort of thing, will have to be qualified. Now they're looking for the right vehicle in which to, the right act to make sure that all letting agents and estate agents are also qualified. As I said, the previous government raised an inquiry in 2019 about the regulation of property agents. So, and the industry got behind it straight away, and there's a code of practice that's already been agreed. So it's all ready to go, all ready to go. And Propertymark agents will be the first there because they'll be able to sign up going, well, we're already qualified. So the professionalism of the market is absolutely there. This new act, again, is going to require professionalism to be able to run it successfully and not be sued. The major change in this act, which I haven't said already, is that the local authorities have a duty to pursue breaches, whereas at the moment they don't. So they're being forced to do it. And once they do make an application of these civil penalty notices, they get to keep the money. So it's a self-funding service. So yes, professionalism is being driven, and it's definitely on the cards.
Apart from that, with all having said today, what do you wish for the future in the UK property market? Maybe not being too aspirational, staying humble. Because I can feel, I can sense your urge to, to drive change. And what do you think will happen, or what do you wish for the future?
I'd like to see agents qualified. Hand on heart, without my background, I don't know how agents do this. I really don't. I can see, businesses expanding so that they have a legal advisor on board, or within the group of, so they've got hands-on assistance at all times. I mean, Propertymark agents do have telephone assistance with issues. I see the market changing in that there will be fewer small agents and larger corporate agents that will be taking over the market, because they're big enough to deal with so many changes and the financial aspects of those too. But property technology is hugely changing. That's an exciting area in which it's growing and developing. We haven't yet got one system that will do everything from end to end of the transaction. That would be really lovely. But you can package together the right prop tech now to help you be a lot more compliant than perhaps they are at the moment. And most of the inefficiencies that we see and the problems coming through are that agents have got CRM systems, but they're not using them properly and not fully. And the staff aren't trained to use them in exactly the same ways. And then, errors crop up.
Karen, thank you so much for the conversation today. You gave us a very interesting and insightful introduction into the changes. And I have to admit, I am very ignorant regarding the UK market. But you taught me a couple of things, and I hope I understand some of them. You gave us the changes of the Section 8 notice, the Section 21 no-fault evictions notice. You talked about the mandatory redress elements and the entire changes of the current housing market. You gave us a very interesting element regarding the strategies for success for letting agents, also letting us understand the services of letting agents and their involvement, and also their risk exposure regarding compliance. And it's not only on the landlord, but it's also on the letting agent, especially when they do the full services and the full management. You also gave us a very interesting overview regarding the lack of groundwork. You mentioned that, and the proper future outlook which you wish for. You gave us a very interesting element regarding the services you're offering regarding Stanley Strategic Consultancy, and also how you help them and how you do the assessment very quickly in the end. You also gave us the perfect overview regarding Propertymark and the industry at the moment there, and that you're also hoping for more standards and more professionalism in the market in order to help and also serve both clients and also letting agents. Karen, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience which we haven't touched upon today?
I think the optimism, renting is here to stay. Whilst we get excited about the laws and all the changes, ultimately we are here to serve tenants and the landlords to keep those tenants in their homes. And let's not forget that it is their homes. And we want to provide good quality properties for people to live in. That has such a knock-on effect to every other aspect of their life. Karen, how can people reach out to you? They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or on our website at stanleystrategicconsultants.co.uk. Perfect. I'll put those into the show notes. I'm sending the best regards to Sussex in England. And yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been fabulous to speak with you, Michael. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.